And I don't know if anyone's looked at the sheet and seen this, but Adam does not pick his prospects well.
The question is, does Max make the playoffs if he doesn't sell?
Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the first and hopefully last episode of the Fuck the Nats podcast.
That's the thing. It's like when you're me and like you know that you're a fucking idiot, stick with Christian Vasquez and he will lead my team in steals again.
The memories that come to the surface most clearly are me sorting my baseball cards one way one night and then completely redoing them the next night.
Actually, I'm going to reframe this. JD, why don't you start by talking about Dylan Beavers?
Apologies, I couldn't hear your question because the audio went out.
Bonjour and hola and every other relevant language in baseball. I guess bonjour isn't really relevant in baseball. French people don't really play it. I would probably be better with like konnichiwa, but that's okay. We are doing our podcast. We are back. We've had a couple weeks of hiatus, but I got Ben with me as always. Adam joining us. Again, I don't think people can see the name online, so let me just tell the wonderful people at home that your name tonight, Adam, you are identifying as Reese Olson's run support.
You need someone needs to be Reese Olson's run support.
You know, everyone needs a little run support. Tarek Skubal does not need any more run support. That man is 5-0 on the season. We're going to get into Adam's team, including his wonderful pitching staff, a little bit later this episode. We got a Division I deep dive because we missed it in recent weeks. We got a Division II deep dive. If you're a fan of Conference One, this is your podcast. It's going to be heavily centered on that. But we'll get into some Conference II talk. We got a lot to talk about because it's been some time. Of course, Ben's going to give his power rankings. Ben, I don't know if you have baseball cards for us today. Hopefully you do.
I do not.
Oh, horrible news, man. You're like 0 for 6 on the season and having that right.
I know. I've been busy.
Let's start with a question from the audience. I got this text, let's see, 8:05, 8:27, 23 minutes ago. This is from a anonymous league member.
Oh.
It says, serious question, like actually serious. Is Chris Sale and Seth Lugo the best 1-2 punch in FTN? I won't say names on who asked the question.
Yeah, it's a crazy. Who on earth could that be? I was about to say, like, who do you not have their phone number for in the league? That feels like bad owner, bad commissioner talk. But I'm starting to see now that you're keeping him anonymous for his own safety.
Adam, you've been pretty much unanimously regarded by the league as having the best pitching staff. So why don't we start with you? Seth Lugo and Chris Sale. Very interesting pitchers in their own rights. Both of them have had very fun career arcs where, you know, if Seth Lugo does what he's doing this year for the next 3 seasons, we may just see a documentary made about him one day because he's had such an interesting career path. I'm not talking about a best in show, award-winning documentary. He's not that interesting, but he's a guy with a story to tell. And we all know about Chris Sale, his injuries, his weird pitching motion, his small frame against the odds. What can you tell us about these guys in 2024?
I mean, they've certainly contributed like the best 1-2 punch of starters in the league. I mean, it would be like a fun, like hipstery pick to have, but I mean, I don't think you can really like argue too much against the actual results. I mean, they're great and have been great. It was Seth Lugo particularly was like a weird one. I don't know if you all are like devout Eno Saris fans, but I am. And going into the year, his like stuff plus pitching plus whatever like had Seth Lugo popping for like, in my mind, and really I think most people's mind, like literally no reason. especially for a guy with like predominant pitch is like his curveball, which is like very like not in vogue anymore. But if you guys watched his start the other day, his curveball is like a legitimate 2-strike pitch, which most curveballs are not used as anymore. So that's how you know it's good. It's been fun. I fuck Graydon, fuck everything he stands for, fuck his morals, fuck his mom. Like, but that's a really good top 2.
Reminder that this is a public YouTube video.
I want to say this though. This year, I don't know how you guys feel. It feels so weird with the pitching, and maybe it's because of all the injuries across the board. But you've got a lot of names in this top 20, top 25 rankings that you're like, what the fuck are they doing here? And like you said, we're a good chunk into the season. We're past, he had a good start to the season. Like, we have to say, okay, I guess Ranger Suarez is the best pitcher in baseball. Because if you take out Shohei, he's number 1 rated pitcher. Like, if you would have told anyone a year or two ago, Ranger fucking Suarez would be the best pitcher in baseball, we would be laughing at you. That includes, I'm just roughly Ranger Suarez, Seth Lugo. I mean, you've got Tanner, well, maybe not Tanner, but like, this is also including some relief pitchers, so can't really go through it quickly. But you've got guys like Jared Jones, who really came out of nowhere and just lit the world on fire. So it feels almost like a changing of the guard. And maybe go ahead.
Update, Ben. Update, because one of those new out of nowhere top 25 guys may or may not be rostered by you. Out of nowhere, Ronel Blanco.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Foreign substance. You want to ask? These guys came out of nowhere. These guys came out of a factory making professional grade sticky substances. That's where they came from. The new stuff. At this point, the new undetectable stuff until tonight.
Wait, did that actually just happen?
Well, I'm just getting updates from GroupMe. And
I want to go see this. Wow, right when I'm talking about it. That's crazy.
It's always the Astros, man.
But it's
whenever there's a scam, it's always the Astros.
I don't see anything yet. Hold on. Somebody else talk, because I got to look up my guy. This is more important than the podcast at the moment.
Yeah.
The first stage is the denial stage, Ben.
I don't see anything about it.
I will say that I just speaking on like pitchers being weird as a whole this year. I've been seeing. I wouldn't call it conspiracy talk because it's from like very credible like people and like journalists that are. I wouldn't call it speculating, but like have an idea about like there's been some stuff going on with like humidors, and that like balls that are getting hit at exit velocities at angles that it would be home runs in years prior just like haven't been home runs this year, and part of that is the weather. It's still fairly like early in the spring. There's still some cold games, but this is Major League Baseball, and they like to change the game fundamentally every year. So it's just been one of those where they decided that like no one can hit this year, which like might be contributing to pitchers that wouldn't traditionally be viewed as having the skill sets of number 1 pitchers like Ranger Suarez to like just all of a sudden be able to pull off the unthinkable and the impossible.
Well, I want to say this to Graydon. I have not seen anything, so I'm going to call bullshit on that. But go ahead, Drew.
Well, it was John Duong who posted it as an FYI in the group chat.
Notable
it's incorrect. It was Graydon.
Ronel Blanco.
That is Graydon Cowan who posted that. Thank you very much, though.
Oh, that is Graydon. My bad. JD responded to it. JD responded to it. George Kirby would never.
All right, let's keep the ball rolling. I didn't mean to get us too sidetracked here. My whole point was it feels a little topsy-turvy with the pitching this year. It really does. Like, my roster is composed of guys I would have never rostered, a year ago, and they're all doing great for me. So, I think that's going to be a big thing for teams this year is can they abandon some, pitchers who maybe historically have been very good but just aren't performing, and they have that mindset of, well, I'm not going to roster this dude because he's historically been a bum. Well, there's a lot of bums pitching really, really well this year, so it's going to be interesting to see going down the stretch.
That's very true. There are a lot of bums pitching well, and there's a lot of known quantities pitching not so well. There's also the guys that we expect to be inconsistent and not good pitching inconsistently and not good, like Brady Singer and Reed Detmers and Hunter Brown.
Common denominator on that one.
Just to name a few unrelated pitchers.
A random assortment.
Just from the top of my mind. But yeah, so I just wanted to start with that question. I got that right before we started this. I don't have 3 key storylines this week because I just got home from dinner and I didn't prep for this. But let me just give you a couple things because last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever we last planned the pod, it was certainly before I played Jack. I had some 3 key storylines drafted up, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I wanted to go through what I had as the number 3 storyline for the week that I was going to present in the past and it never made it to the pod. But here we go. Let's discuss this because I'm interested to hear you guys' thoughts. Adam, this is a little bit spurred. For context, Adam texted me earlier today. No, he didn't. I lied. Somebody else texted me this earlier in the week. I'm dumb. I'm going to move on. The point is, bear with me. The point is, I was going to say a couple weeks ago, it's been really difficult to sweep. It's been really difficult to get big wins in FTN. In fact, I don't think we had a better than 8-2 win, and I think there was only one of them leading into this past week. Then, week 7 happens, and we get an 8-2, a 7-1-2, a 7-2-1, which should have been a 10-0, arguably, and a 7-3, that's JD over Ben, which was an OBP that JD, with Ronald Acuna Jr., Bobby Witt, Corbin Carroll, etc., lost to Ben on Sunday Night Baseball, 289 to 291. That should have been an 8-2 matchup as well. My point is, we've not seen the blowouts. We've seen even in matchups of historically good teams against expansion teams this year even, be very close. Perry playing everyone competitively even though he was last year's doormat. And then this past week happens. This is what I was thinking about, Adam, because earlier today you texted me, maybe it was yesterday, you texted me, this is a week of a return to normalcy. And that's just in contrast with what we've seen through the first 7 weeks where it's been not blowouts. Week 7, we start to have a couple blowouts. And now you're telling me we're going to be back to the normal power hierarchy in the league. So what do you take of, is the league, are we going to see crazy close scores, or are we going to start to see some separation? And if we are going to see some separation, how come?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the standings and you look at the top of the divisions, and it is now like again the usual suspects. So but it has been scrappier, and I think that it's due to a couple of reasons. One, it's been talked about ad nauseum. Everyone's really active. Everyone's using all of their acquisitions, and it's really tough to sweep folks when they could just go volume on you and you get scared of ratios, and then all of a sudden you 1 or 2, and then that's sort of it in terms of the sweep. And I think that's totally fine. You got to do what you got to do to win. And I'd also say that a lot of the upstarts and the activity and why those have been good is that I think that a lot of the top teams and a lot of the teams with more, I wouldn't even say top, but teams with more established players at specific positions have been sort of saying it's a slow start, this guy hasn't been yet, but he'll one day be getting there. Well, the teams with less established players have been able to go pick up the guys that start on heaters, and then they sort of sustain those. So you'll find that guys are just picking up the right guys at the right times and cutting them and burning them quick. And, it's much better to do that than to stick with the Alex Bregmans or the Julios for the first while, or, others, Ronald Acuna's, who the studs that haven't quite gotten their role going. They can be outproduced by say a bum in third place in his division picked up Jesse Winker. So that is a way that's been countered. So I think as everything as the year continues and like we see this year after year that like guys start slow and you sort of look at the end of the year and like, oh, they did just as well as they did last year. I think sort of as that starts, getting back to where it is, the guys that had good teams and like stuck with their players are, generally going to be more rewarded, or at least more rewarded as they were in the beginning of the season. But, I think with just the increase in activity and like being able to and being willing to just like go get the guy that's hot and that's good right now, like some of those guys are going to stick, and like that's going to be like massive improvements from teams that haven't really had that spark historically.
I do want to say this. I want to issue an apology to Grayton. Brunel Blanco was in fact ejected for a foreign substance from today's game. Could face a 10-game suspension. But let's continue on. We'll glance past that fact, and I'll go cry in the corner.
Well, I think let's continue on. Well, let's go right into the power ranking. We have so much to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, like this could be a 2-hour podcast.
You'd like it to be a 2-hour pod?
Say it could be. Listen, I'm gonna need to get a refill at some point soon if that's the case. So
for sure. I hope I've always thought. I wonder, does our audience drink along with us?
No,
Probably
they
not.
don't.
'Cause people probably watch this during work hours. Don't
I
they?
absolutely watch during work hours.
Yeah, we know our audience. Ben, are you ready for power rankings?
Yep, haven't looked at the rankings for like 3 weeks, but let's do it. Let's ramble off.
Well, it's the perfect time for an update.
Week 6, let's go JD number 1.
I don't know. We aren't even week 6, but it's not going to work if I don't do it this way. So it's going to be week like whatever it is. Just pretend this is this week. This is the most. JD number 1.
Still. Listen, you guys touched on it. JD is just having massive underperformance by his offense right now. I fully believe that JD has one of the most solid across the. I'm not saying in a given week somebody can't outperform JD, but if I was to pick a team week to week offensively, if those guys are going like they should, JD's my winner on offense every week. So I can't discount that fact. Pitching, like I said, is all across the board. As far as volume-wise, JD is undefeated in that. I think he's top Ks and wins. So nobody's dethroning him in that aspect. So JD's still my number 1.
These are not my rankings, I know, but I'll give my reaction here and there.
You're welcome to. I don't give a shit about it, but you're welcome to give it.
Adam's the number 1 team. Reese Olson's run support.
Yeah, I'm going to put Adam number 2. I'm putting him number 2.
Disrespectful.
It's not disrespectful.
I have no interest in being number 1. Keep that.
Especially since
away from me.
Adam beat JD head to head.
I lost to JD head to head.
Oh, there you go, Drew. There you go, Drew. Suck my dick. All right.
I think if you beat someone in the championship, you get like 4 head-to-head wins worth of like street cred.
All right, now, Drew, if we're going solely based on record, you know who I'm putting here at number 3, right?
Well, we're not going solely based on record.
Oh, but you just said Adam had a better record. He was the best team. Okay.
I didn't say that. But okay.
No, actually, we're recording this, so you can go back and listen to those words coming out of your mouth.
I just said that Adam beat JD head to head, which was factually incorrect.
Just misinformation.
I didn't mention the record. Who's your number 3? Vinny?
It is Jack.
Jack, yeah.
Finally, the big 3.
Yeah. Listen, he emerged from the depths of 3rd place. He overcame apparently 2 of the best teams in FTN to reclaim 1st position in that division. You have to respect it. I don't care what Drew says. I know he's got an opinion. I don't give a shit about it.
In my opinion, we once again have a clear top 3. And this is them. I disagree with the order slightly, but this is the top 3. Can't really argue it.
Now, Adam, here at number 4, we're going Vinny.
Wait, hold on, Ben. Hold on, Ben. This is a good point to bring Adam in. Adam, this is your top 3. I don't even have to ask you. We all know this is your top 3 as well. Like, it has to be. So, what's your ordering for these guys?
I'm probably fine with it the way that it is. I think you could probably swap Jack and I, just based on I think his team's hot right now, and obviously had it monstrous last week, and I've been slightly underperforming. I think, and Jade, it's all a big blob. I think it's fine the way it is. I wouldn't want to be number one, and so I'm glad I'm not. And you can do the rest as you will.
I'm so tired of the humility in this league. Come on, Adam. You're the best team in the league. Start acting like it.
If I stopped playing everyone close every week, then I would start acting like it. But when you come off of an absolutely hair-raising matchup with the guy who had the worst record in the league last year, obviously Perry's been much better this year. We've talked about it again at length. But if you are going to say you're the best team in the league, you should, probably take care of business a little bit more soundly than I did.
Not a lot of people have taken care of business, as we just discussed. It's been a rare year for blowouts. 6-3-1 is getting up to the upper echelon of wins. But Ben, why don't you give us number 4? I'm very curious who you put here, by the way. Vinny. Despite he's coming off a 2-8 loss.
The record is intact.
To Ryan Ulrich.
And as it stands, he's still a wild card team. I think, Ryan has been a roller coaster this year in terms of his performance. Some weeks he's on fire, some weeks he's shit in the bed. I think Vinny can very easily drop in the next 2 weeks and drop hard. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because his record demands that respect, at least to me. My division doesn't have, not speaking ill of the dead, but doesn't have 3 teams to beat up on anymore. So if you've got a well over 500, team and you've played some first conference teams as well, that puts you in the upper echelon. I think probably for whoever I put at number 5 could probably be swapped with Vinny pretty interchangeably. But I would say Vinny is in danger of dropping much, much lower in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, his team is deceased, and it's no fault of his own. But he has 3 pitchers left, and and the pitchers that are healthy have been the most unsustainable overachievers in the league this season. I mean, where would Vinny be if Ranger Suarez was not on his team?
Right.
Who is a waiver pickup kind of guy, who is, I think everyone, if you asked 1,000 people, I don't think anyone would actually suspect Ranger Suarez to win the NL Cy Young at the end of the season. So if he hasn't had the start that he had, if Jordan Hicks hasn't had the start that he had, if Clark Schmidt, who is notably the most mid pitcher in the history of baseball, has the start that he had, God only knows. I mean, again, it's not his fault. Cole's out, Miller's out, Eovaldi's out. These are stalwarts. These are.
Are you going to give me the same benefit of the doubt?
I'll give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but this is a lot of the times these power rankings are reactionary week by week.
Yes.
And at some point, I'm going to react week by week, and I'm not going to say he's got a good record when his team was healthy.
He
got his shit kicked by Ryan Ulrich, and half of his team is deceased. So I go fight yourself.
Going to, if he's a game and a half behind my number 1 team, I have to give him a little more respect that he can pull it off. He's been pulling it off. I know he's injured. I know he just came off a bad win to Ryan. And like I said, if he loses the next 2 weeks and he loses badly, he's going to drop like a rock and he's going to be near the bottom. Just because of those things.
Should you give your number 1 team less respect?
No, I shouldn't. JD deserves my respect.
A couple nuggets from Vinny's team just to note. Eric Fetty tonight pitches 7 innings with 3 hits allowed, no runs, no walks, and 6 Ks.
I mean, come on, this has been the story of Vinny's season. It's Garrett Cole's dead, but here comes Eric Fetty. It's just not going to last.
Mike King has had 2 double-digit strikeout games this season. He had 10 a few weeks ago, followed by an 11 strikeout performance against the Dodgers, his most recent outing last week. 7 innings pitched against the Dodgers, no runs, 11 Ks. Ron Harris Suarez is the number 1 pitcher in fantasy baseball. He is 7-0. 7 wins. That is a win per week. That is insane. And the final thing to note, Paul Sewald is back from injury. He is the likely closer, if not setup man for the Diamondbacks, who should be better with his return, start winning some ball games. Big boost for Vinny. So
I will say before we move on, I applaud Vinny for keeping it afloat. While
He's doing
all
better
of-
than a float.
Right. More than a float. I applaud him for floating. Many of other teams would have truly collapsed and given up. Besides that,
now
it's not happening for much longer.
I
would agree.
have to say, Vinny is in Italy right now. For those of you who don't follow him on Instagram, go find him on Instagram and follow him. He's posting fire content from Italy. This did lead to 0 matchup acquisitions in his 2-8 loss to Ryan. And that's only notable because he's entering a matchup against JD, who we all know is going to use all 4 matchup acquisitions. Vinny, if you get crushed by JD this week, look yourself in the mirror and say,
He's not going to hear this. He's in Italy.
He's
not gonna listen to
or the
this.
fantasy league. All right,
The
I'm just
priorities.
saying.
Be straightened out.
I'm just saying. All right, let's move on. Number 5, Ben. Who you got?
Number 5. Well, this one's a little tough because he's actually been fairly disappointing to me. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I'm putting Sean here. Not, he's down below Drew, and I understand that, and he's really slowed down. Yes, I see that he is last place in the division. That is a factual statement. It's better than you make with your unfactual statements. But again, Sean's offense has the potential to just be absolutely nuclear. I think what hurts Sean is he can never fucking decide what he wants to do with his pitching. So if he could do that, and again, I would put Sean and Vinny, like I said, they're interchangeable in my mind, but they're both in the same boat. They have the potential to drop like rocks in the next few weeks. If they don't pull it together and they don't right the ship and they don't start winning some games, they are going to fall, and they're going to fall hard. So that's my only reason to believe. Drew, I'll give you you're going number 6 here. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you that. Say second place in between 2 guys I have ranked above you. It's not a bad place to be in. I continue to question some of the moves you made, but you seemed very prescient in your move of Gray Rod, because Gray Rod got hurt 24 hours after you made that deal, so it was pretty prescient on your part. But I like the team. You're being driven by, the guys who we thought you were going to be driven by. The offense looks like it's in a very solid place. You still may have a few holes, but overall it's much better. Pitching-wise, again, I think there may be some changes, but I can't criticize too much because you have been a top team. You're over 500, and you're beating 2 guys, or, you were beating 2 guys that, were playoff and championship contenders last year. So I applaud you. Number 6, I think that if you continue to win, Vinny and Sean lose, that you'll be leapfrogging them and you'll be moving up to that number 4 spot. But I need to see some more confirmation of that.
Based on Jacob's luck index he posted, I should have gone 500 against Jack, and I should still be top of that division, baby. But conversation for another day. Adam, let's hear your 4 through 6.
Yeah, I don't want to elaborate too much on here for time's sake. But yeah, I mean, going through, where the stats are this year, like, it hasn't even been the pitching for Sean. It's just been the offense. He's sort of cobbled together an effective pitching strategy. But when you go in and your entire team is supposed to, I think Drew, you would have said it, and I think you would have potentially agreed that, he had the best offense in the league and he was going to steamroll everyone on offense, and, if he could just figure out pitching. But in fact, it's the hitting that's fallen flat. He's injured as hell. He's unfortunately not anymore, starting 3 Oakland Athletics, and none of them are Brent Rooker or Zach Geloff. It's dire straits for him. It's the signs are there for when guys get healthy again that he can go and take off. But for right now, it's been really disappointing. So I think it's a fair ranking.
injuries have been the theme for the two teams ahead of me. I will note that I have
been the theme for the league,
far and
Drew.
away. Well, I was just gonna say you could write that the biggest story from my season so far is that I've been far and away the healthiest team in the league with no major injuries. The only players that have gotten injured have been dropped in due course because they were injured and not good enough to rock. I mean, Wilson Contreras is arguably my biggest injury. If not him, Chris Bryant, and both of them have been dropped. So if I start getting some injuries, you may see me dropping in these rankings too. Like, God forbid Logan Gilbert goes down. Knock on any wood I can find. All right, 5 and 6. You have Sean, Drew, Sean, or you have another team sneaking in here, Adam?
Right now, I'd probably have you over Sean. At some point, like, we're getting to the point in the rankings that it just doesn't matter, and I don't want to be like the sort of like top 3 elitist, but everyone's been playing each other very tight this year, and especially when like, these teams are of like equal talent levels or close to equal talent levels, like, there's merit to ranking them, but like we're getting close to like the 9 team, the 10 team can beat the 6 team, the 5 team every week. So like, I'm not going to put too much thought or pressure on any with specific rankings. They're very fluid right now.
All right, well, I'm just going to fill in Vinny, it sounds like, but it's not the spirit of the power rankings, Adam. You're supposed to come in with hot takes. That was a very cold, mild take.
Well, I wasn't expecting Jack to get that much respect from Bean. I thought my hot take was going to be, Jack back up there, but I'm proud of the guy.
I see Jack. I understand what's happening here.
All right, Ben. 7 through 9, 7 through 8. However you want to do
Here's
this.
where
What
it
do you
gets a
got?
little messy because it gets tough. Because let me start from the bottom. We're gonna do it in a little reverse today, and we're gonna work our way up.
I love it.
Okay, so at number 12, I'm putting myself.
As you
and
should.
I listen. I have been critically injured. I have 9 guys on IL right now. Even trading away 3 of those injured guys, I had 9 back then before I traded them away. I have had so many injuries. My team, like we talked about, offense is down across the board in the league. All my best pitchers got injured. All my offensive guys got injured. And even the ones who weren't injured weren't hitting that well. I have 1 or 2 guys on offense who are actually doing well. It's just a shitty start to the season. I hope it turns around. I'm not going to be making any giant moves. I'm not going to talk more about myself. I'm in 12th. Ryan.
I'll talk more about you.
Okay,
I'll
go
talk
ahead.
more about you for a second.
We have
Maybe Adam. Maybe.
We have a whole Division 1 or a whole Conference 1 preview to get through. We are 32 minutes in.
Oh, we're golden. Look, I'll just say this, Ben. I think, given where your season's at now, you've got to be regretting trading Shane McClanahan because it's a lost season.
Why?
By next year.
Literally, my position in the
you're
season
be
has
hoping,
nothing to do with Shane McClanahan. Nothing.
Why'd you trade him? Go on record right now for the people.
2 Tommy Johns.
There's a history of pitchers who come back from that. Adam Wainwright.
Cole
Reagans. Cole Reagans.
I think those are probably the
technically
only
Tommy
2
Johns.
you can name.
One was in
Name a
Trailblazers.
third.
Well, I'm not going to do that.
No,
All
because
right,
you
let's go to
can't.
number 11. Well, I just don't have it top of mind.
Anyway. Number 11. Okay, this is coming from Conference 2 Division Invertebrates. So here's where it gets tough. Because they're all under 500 at this point. That division, funny enough, even though it has brand new owners, is suffering from the same problem that we faced when it had 3 previous owners, and that I have no idea what the fuck is going to happen in that division. Graydon is going to be number 10, but Ryan's going to be at 11. Graydon's 10. Ryan's 11. Other way, Drew.
What? That's just wrong. That's just wrong.
Listen, Ryan moves up a spot because he's been winning games, and he came off a good win against a top-ranked team. Graydon has probably been the luckiest team in the league. His offense and his pitching. I don't think he's above 6th place in any category in terms of his performance.
No one. Shut up, Ben. No one wants to hear about Graydon. Adam, come on, man. Ryan can't be ranked 11th here.
I mean, you can't. He 8-2'd your 4.
Well, I know, but again, I'm going to take some past performance into consideration.
What happened to power rankings? The spirit of the power rankings is all gone.
Ryan moved up. Do you not see that? Ryan moved up.
Oh wow, he moved up from last place to second to last week. He absolutely mollywopped your number 4. You're holding up for no reason other than the fact that he was good in week 2. Give the guy some goddamn
And he
respect.
tied your number 5. He tied your number 5.
You're talking all about how Vinny's been so good, like with his hodgepodge.
I may lay this out. You know me. I may lay this out, and I may decide something entirely different. I may shuffle guys around. We're just gonna get it on paper, and we'll adjust it as needed. I'm going straight off the top here. Come on now. All right.
Ryan Ulrich wins the league. Write it down.
You know what? Do me a favor. Put Ryan at 9, and we're gonna put Perry at 11.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. There you go.
Everybody knows.
All right, there you go. I succumbed to peer pressure.
Ryan.
Top 10 for Ryan. It's probably the first time in like 3 or 4 years that Ryan's been above top 10. So congratulations.
He's not
Ryan.
He wasn't number 1. He was definitely not top 10.
Okay, so starting just covering the ball, Perry. I mean, it's been actually a decent season for Perry. He's right there with Max. Max is arguably going to be. I'm going to put Max at 8. If you just want to fill it out, I know I'm going off the top here, and then you can fill it out. Well, actually, no, because that leaves Jacob. Oh, this is tough. This is really tough.
Jacob's easily the team I would least like to play in that division right now.
It would be Ryan for me.
Paul Blackburn did just get hurt. This is
tough. I know it's only 2 spots, but I don't want to slight either one of them. Because both of them have actually been having pretty respectable seasons, considering what we expected from Perry. For him to come out and have almost a 500 record, I mean, it's not, but almost a 500 record in a very tough conference, I need to give him a little bit of credit. It's going to go Perry then Max. Well,
Jacob is last place in the weakest division.
All right, we're going to take Perry. We're going to move him up to 8. Jacob goes 11, and Max goes 7. Max goes 8, Perry goes 7. I told you. All right, this looks good to me now. We're going to jumble it around a little bit.
It's mayhem. It's havoc.
It really is mayhem because everyone is in such a tight race for that kind of 6 to 9 spot. I don't really know how to sort them that well. But I'm curious on your thoughts.
It's a glob.
Is this right, Ben? Do I have this right?
Yeah, you actually followed that pretty well for how fast I was rambling changes.
Excellent. Adam, the floor is yours.
I don't have too much to add to this. It could all be right. I mean, if Jacob beat the shit out of Perry next week, I don't think anyone would really bat an eye. So, I really think it's it's all a blob, anyone can beat anyone, but these are where they're at now, and I think it's fair to put them all there.
Well, you got to give your numbers to them.
Okay. Lock in. I'll go Max over Perry. Swap those. I'll go Graydon over Ryan.
Really?
Yeah.
After you told me to give him respect?
It was mostly a bit at that point. I just wanted to cheer his name. By God, did we cheer his name?
Yes,
and then I'll keep the last 2 in order. It really just doesn't matter. It is what it is. Next week it'll all change. Nothing matters. We're all gonna die. We're all just dust in the wind. Put whoever you want at 8.
I would say it's safe to say this though. We are having a top 6 solidify. I would say that most people would agree with that. We are having a top 6 that is solidifying themselves as the playoff contenders for this year. Obviously, one of those teams from the invertebrates division is going to make the playoffs. The question as to who? No fucking clue.
And they could be, they're not the easiest out in the playoffs either. They're especially full out 5 matchup acquisitions to 5 matchup acquisitions. Anyone can play anyone tough. So I agree that Drew is sort of in that top tier of competitors right now, and sort of anywhere below him is I wouldn't quite put up in that like competing for a division title spot right now. But they're all respectable teams that can beat anyone or at least play them close in a particular week. So all due respect to really everyone in the league.
I do want to say there's one team in that bottom 6 that is trending down right now. Who could go to the bottom 3. He's already in my bottom 3, but could go to 12, and that's Graydon. I mean, majorly disappointing stuff from Graydon. Like I said earlier, if you look across the board, you look at all his categories, and he's going to lose his shit when he hears this. But he is bottom 6 for every single category.
But let's just I get it, and I agree. But we started the show talking about, is Seth Lugo and Chris Sale the best 1-2 in the league? I said it could be. We're going to, at some point in the show, just talk about how amazing William Contreras is. It's going to be a very pro Graydon podcast for how much we're shitting on Graydon. So I just, out there to him, that's sort of our olive branch, is that we can say the results have been bad, but look how good, everyone not named O'Neal Cruz, who might be the worst player in baseball, is. There's some hope.
There is some hope.
So, thank you guys for the power rankings. Always interesting. Just a quick note on that New York division into the invertebrates division this year. Last year, that division was won by Joe DeMonte with a 460 winning percentage. The current leader in the division is Graydon with a 479 winning percentage. So quality maybe increased just a little bit this year. It's great news across the board, almost certainly due to better active management. All right, Adam, this has been, I didn't think this was going to be a normal occurrence on the podcast, but I actually think I like this segment. We did it with Perry. We did it with the Mariners fan. So now it's your turn. You're our resident Nats fan. In fact, you are the reason we are called Fuck the Nats. Let's a little bit about where that league name even came from, if you guys don't know, because I'm sure there's people in here who have no idea where that came from. So Adam was a freshman at Ohio State. And he joined the ultimate frisbee team with myself and Max at the time. I don't think anyone else in the league was on the team at the time.
No.
Well, either way, I'll make this quick. So Adam came in, and he's a Nationals fan. He's from Virginia,
Maryland,
is that right?
I'm in Virginia
Maryland?
now. Just a
And
DMV guy.
your dad is an Orioles fan.
Nope. It's a Nat.
I thought I knew about you.
Formerly, he's from Cleveland. He was formerly a Guardians fan, and then moved to DC probably about 35 years ago now, and sort of adopted all those guys. As you can imagine, being a Cleveland sports fan is tough on a guy. So when you have the option to no longer be a Cleveland sports fan, I think he jumped on that eagerly. And it hasn't worked out much better, but we'll always have 2019, So
Yeah, exactly. You got a World Series.
So Adam comes in, little freshman baby. And he says he's a Nats fan, and Ultimate Frisbee has a very rowdy cheering scene. And we
Do you know how
created.
pathetic that sounds?
We created.
It's more pathetic than even it sounds, I think.
We created our own chance for our ultimate.
You're
team
making
at Ohio
this
State.
public knowledge, Drew. I want you to be aware
I am
of
making.
that.
Well, I am. This is the origin story of FTN, and it's relevant because Adam's here, and people need to know the story. So, either way, Max and I were super confused because when Max and I were like kids, the Nationals didn't exist, right? They were the Expos. They were in Canada.
Hating yourself.
They were in Canada. The point is who was an Expos fan, let alone a Nats fan? And so when Adam came in and said he's a Nats fan, Max and I are like, this is the first Nationals fan either of us have ever known in our lives. And we're like, who's a Nats fan? Fuck the Nats. Like, who are they? Who are they to think that they're good and that, they deserve fandom? Like, and why is Adam not an Orioles fan? He's from Maryland, or he's from the area. I thought it was Virginia, but either way, I thought you were an Orioles fan. So Either way, we just started saying "fuck the Nats" all the time when Adam was around, kind of to piss him off, and then it became a chant. And I think the team was even still doing it after we left school. So that's great.
I
So
hope
that's
so.
why we're fucking Nats. So here's what we're gonna do. Adam, I want you to give just a 2-3 minute quick rundown. How is the national season going? What are the vibes? You live in DC currently, so you're around the local populace. Like what do people feel about this team? Look, I like Mackenzie Gore. They got some young guys. The prospects, the farm is really fantastic, I think. But I don't know. What do you see?
It's sort of like a funny, like, I don't want to relate this back to like other fandoms that I have, but sort of like gives a Process Sixers vibe, in that we're not good. We're definitely not good. And like the fandom like doesn't really care if we win or lose. It's just sort of all like icing on the cake until like James Wood and Dylan Cruz get called up. But I will say that we're playing just like the best kind of bad baseball.
Yeah.
Like everyone on our team fucking sucks. We're slapping the
CJ
ball
Abrams
around.
slanders. What? Come on.
Absolutely. He's good, but everyone else, and even him on times, I still don't truly believe in him long term. But it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. That like we are slapping the ball around. We are like by far leading the league in steals, unless Ellie De La Cruz was his own team, in which case I could be wrong about that. But like we're running, we're pitching fine enough. Mackenzie Gore is great. Defense sucks. So many errors. Like we're a very entertaining team right now, and eventually, those the aspirations and the pressure and the expectations will come back. Hopefully in the next couple of years, but as of right now, it's like we just sit here and we laugh every time we win a game. It's like like up until tonight, Kyle Finnegan hadn't given up a hit in 34 straight batters. How ridiculous is that? He is terrible. Again, shout out Vinny. Like what? Like come on. Like what are we even doing here? Like he's terrible. Like Eddie Rosario is an everyday player for us. He won NL Player of the Week last week. Like it's like no win is like haha, like we deserve to win that game. Like every win is like, oh my god, you guys must suck so bad you just lost to us, which I think it's fun to be a fan of.
That's great. Thanks for the update. I certainly don't follow the Nationals all that closely.
Or should you?
Cole Henry's minor league career. God bless him.
If he fell off the face of the earth, I don't think anyone would notice.
You're probably right about that one. Maybe I would. All right. Well, we still got a loaded agenda. Let's do Division 1 deep dive. Then I have another topic we'll talk about. We'll come back and do Division 2 deep dive. So let's talk Division 1. Division 1, this is the is it still called Arm Pains? It probably isn't, right? Because Ryan's not in that division anymore.
It is called 2 Tanks, 1 General.
2 Tanks, 1 General. You being the general, Max finally entering potentially his tanking phase, but not really. We'll talk about that in a second. There was the obvious tank job last year. I don't know, Adam, you're winning the division. You won the division last year. You are likely the favorite to win it this year. The team looks really good. Where's your headspace at?
It's been fine. I'd say of the players that have been good, I'm scared they will stop being good. And of the players that have been bad, I am scared they will continue being bad. Alec Boehm is like so fine. And I think he's like top 10 in the player rater right now. Like he's just been unreal. And like eventually that's going to stop. I think he had like a hit last week. Like, we're getting there. Like we're turning back into a pumpkin. The rest of the hitters, like the lineup should be, should cobble together a good enough offense to like win the division. We'll see about the league. But like Goldie, oof. Bregman, woof, until this week. And, Yeah, the pitching staff. I mean, what I think that you said in your, sort of report cards, Drew, was accurate. I've been very, very cognizant of ratios in sort of like a knee-jerk response to everyone going volume. It's worked out fine. It's resulted in a lot of wins, but I do agree that, like, maybe a little bit more foot needs to go on the gas pedal, which is why this week I have made it a point, almost foolishly, we'll find out as Chris Paddock got blown up tonight, but I'm gonna start every guy I have, and we're just gonna see what happens. It's like a little science experiment.
Let's talk a little. Let's talk a little bit about that, Ben. I'd like to hear your perspective too.
Please.
So
I'm gonna get a refill.
Yeah, you go do that, Adam. So weeks 2 through 6, not counting week 1, it was a clown week, short week. He played JD, Notorious Volume, for matchup acquisitions. I'll go to starting pitcher. Weeks 2 through 6. So this was going into the end of the previous week, not counting last week where he played Perry. Adam was a 500 team in K's, wins, ERA, and WHIP. Didn't count save holds. It's kind of its own separate entity.
Sure.
We ranked Adam's staff recently as the number 1 pitching staff in the league fairly unanimously. What did he end up doing last week against Perry? So last week he loses strikeouts. He ties wins. He wins ERA, and in very close dramatic fashion, he wins WHIP by .04. So you do go positive from weeks 2 through 7. But Adam, I'm going to get Ben's opinion after you talk about this real quick, Adam. But what's your reaction to seeing these stats in real time? You are a 500 team in the starting pitching categories weeks 2 through 6.
I think I'm being a coward. I think that's probably the best way to put it, is I'm like so scared of losing ratios that like you'd think that they were worth 2 categories instead of 1. I'm so, I'm so proud of like considering myself above the teams that will pick up shitty guys against the Braves just to like get a couple of strikeouts against me, that I'm willing to let them beat me in certain categories because they do that. I mean, it's unfortunate, and I like putting up the gaudy ERA and WHIP stats when I can. Obviously, it's fun to look at the .94s and the .78s and the 132s and the 84s. Like, yeah, it's cool and all, but like it doesn't. I need to sack up, and I think that's probably what the rest of the season should look like.
Have you been streaming? Have you been streaming starters, or have you not really been streaming starters? Your acquisitions going towards other things during the week?
So sort of what I have positioned my team to be as of right now is like structurally with Mason Miller, our Lord and Savior, blessed be his name, amen. Like I start more relievers than anyone else does in the league, really, outside of like, every now and then someone like does some like weird stuff for a week, right? Like you, when everyone starters are hurt. So I sort of consider myself like a pretty safe holds team. And then I consider my starters sort of like a gas pedal where like I can put my foot on the gas when I need to. If I'm behind in ratios, I'm going to put pressure on for volume stats. And then when I'm ahead in ratios, I'm going to take my foot off the gas. And sort of hold those and like make you almost give up in ratios to me, which I think is a strategy that I employed to great success in the playoffs last year, when I needed to just outright win matchups instead of win them by a lot. But yeah, that's sort of where I've been going.
You beat Max by you lost strikeouts to Perry 68-74, and I'm going to bring Ben into the conversation here. Ben,
please.
Adam lost strikeouts to Perry, not shown here, week 7 against Perry, 68-74. He beat Max in week 2 by a single strikeout, 55-54. There, let's say those strikeouts by 2 in week 2 change around. There's a real chance Adam could have gone 0 for 6 between weeks 2 and 7 in the strikeout category. He is out here rostering 5-0 Tarek Skubal, likely AL Cy Young favorite at the moment. He is rostering Corbin Burns. He is rostering Cole Reagans. Is there a legitimate excuse for this man to be out here losing strikeouts 5 times in 6 weeks and the only win being 55 to 54?
Yeah, I mean, look at the ERA and WHIP. I mean, there was an errant week, maybe week and a half worth of ERA, but overall, anytime you have a weekly ERA under 3, you did great. And he's accomplished that 3 out of 5 times, with one being pretty close. Twice going a WHIP under 1. And the wins aren't suffering because he's pulling in reliever wins. Still going 2-1-2 with that. I mean, not demolishing people in wins, but when he needs to, like he said, putting his foot down, throwing guys out there. I think that discounting, you don't have save holds on here, but I think if you did, it would improve his record by a lot, because I think he's probably won save holds quite a bit. So if you were to put that category in there, I think it really changes the whole picture, where you're like, well, why would he try for Ks when he's taking save holds every week, ERA and WHIP 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5, and wins going 2-1-2? Like, I'll take that. Like, look at my week versus him, for example. I went out and I got 93 Ks, but I only came away with 3 wins. Like, what fucking good did it do me? And then my ERA and my WHIP got, blown up. Maybe they weren't awful. They were still sub 4 ERA and WHIP, but they weren't good enough to compete with sub 1s on both cases. So I don't hate the strategy at all. Clearly it's working. So I don't really think there's much criticism to be had.
Probably fair points all around. I just thought it was so interesting. I expect to look at Adam's pitching stats week to week and be like, oh, this man's dominating volume and he's dominating efficiency.
He's not dominating volume. JD's dominating volume, but this is not a week 2. This is not a week 2.
Well, that's right. I think it just goes to speak about, look, 3 straight teams have put up 90-plus strikeouts against you, Adam. Like,
also, that's ridiculous.
People are playing the game to get wins this year. It is more parity than ever before, and people are really trying to maximize.
Or like everyone is as good as everyone else, or like there's more activity in the league.
Exactly.
I'll drink anyways.
I think I cut out a little bit and missed, but I heard the end of what you said. But yeah, it's just very interesting. So I wanted to share that with you. We have you on. Wanted to get your reaction to it. But Ben, you think Adam's gonna run away with this? Just for the record, last year Adam won the division, 133 wins, 60 losses, and 7 ties.
Oh, he's definitely going to win the division. That's not a question. I don't even need to hear the rest of it. He's going to win the division. Max is finally starting to show like the cracks are showing, which we all thought they would eventually, and they are. So I'm really interested to see how Max handles this transition. You know what he does. He always seems to pull some magic out of his hat. So we'll see what Max does, but he's not winning the division. And then Perry's looking much better this year, but he's not even close. So clear and away, it's going to be Adam.
Before we talk about Max just a little bit, speak of the devil, you had to talk about how good Eddie Rosario's been doing. He has, of course, been picked up by our co-host here during this pod.
No way. He's so bad.
He is so bad, but he's better than Richie Palacios.
Jesus, you were rostering Richie Palacios?
I am dying. My team is so injured. I'm dying.
I mean, like, oh, God. Yeah, NL player of the week. About time he's been put on a roster. Wow, 5 games ago. I literally said it and you picked him up. That's hilarious.
This is going to turn – that's 3 matchup acquisitions for Ben, by the way, this week, I think, already, and it is a Tuesday night, as is par for the course for him. So, I mean, we are not going to have time to talk 10, 15 minutes about every team.
No.
But
I was going to say, maybe do we want to split this into 2 episodes? We'll cover like that division and then the other one? Or how do you want to handle it? Because I don't want to talk less about other teams.
Well, we're
Yeah,
gonna talk about
I
it.
got nowhere to be, frankly.
I'm gonna grab another beer
I
here in
do.
a second, but
I have somewhere to be.
uh,
I can always drop
whatever.
off.
Well-
though. Yeah.
we'll talk quick. There's a lot to talk about with Max's team because he also is feeling that injury bug on the pitching staff. The pitching's been fantastic. The efficiency ratios are great. The volume ratios, not so great. But again, not really his fault with all the injuries he's had. One question that popped into my mind today, and you're gonna roll your eyes, and as is half the league. They're gonna be like, of course, only Drew would bring this up, but I think it's a legitimate question. So, I posted earlier today in the group chat an image of the 2019 top 100 prospects. On that list was Danny Jansen, and Perry liked some message about Danny Jansen. I think you posted a message about Danny Jansen. The point is Danny Jansen's a very good ball player. He's just not ever been able to stay healthy in Toronto. Well, when he is healthy, he's elite, and he's very good. Now, Max is a young, rebuilding team, but he's also not necessarily out of the question of making the playoffs as a wild card this year. And he's done a good job of rebuilding his team to the point over the last year with a record trade deadline, I believe 6 trades on trade deadline week last year.
Open for business.
He's just not that old anymore. We always talk about how ancient his team is. It's just actually not that old anymore. He's got
I
some
don't know
young
if
guys.
age is the reason I say
farm.
the cracks are showing on Max's team. It's just the quality of guys that he has on that team. I think a lot of them overperformed the second half of last year.
This is going to get to my point, which is, look, we've talked about Max's age in the past, and he's done a good job of getting younger. Andy Pages is here, for instance, and now we see Logan O'Hoppe. Is it O'Hoppe? O'Hoppe? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. O'Hoppe's here. O'Hoppe is I think the 23rd ranked catcher on the season. He's a former top 100 prospect. He is he's going to continue to get everyday playing time. It's hard to justify rostering 2 catchers sometimes. But Danny Jansen is out there. If you were Max,
why don't you pick him up, Drew? Since you want him so bad.
It's not that. I arguably should after Wilson Contreras' injury. But this is not about. We'll get into my team on the Division 2 deep dive. For Division 1, talking about Max.
I'm so tired of hearing tell people he should pick this guy up. Why don't you pick him up? I'm so
not
tired
saying
of
he
hearing
should.
that.
I'm not saying he should. I'm asking the question as the podcast host, trying to spur a conversation. Look, should he, in lieu of the top 100 prospect he's having a solid year, but what's Max's win now in Cinema?
I will tell you,
this is just a microcosm.
I will give you an answer to your question, Drew. If any team in this league rosters 2 catchers, they've already lost. Period. Period.
This is why I said
you should never roster 2 catchers.
The catcher question is a microcosm. It's a niche question as part of a larger kind of question here, which is how much should Max prioritize winning now? Is there a wild card spot to be had for this team?
There's not.
I mean, I'll get into the Danny Jansen of it all slightly. I believe I compared him in my seminal work as potentially a human being to, I believe it was Cardell Jones. He was sort of the Cardell Jones of that Blue Jays catching squad back in the day. And I think he is a good example of the problem with the catcher position in general and why guys like Salvador Perez and Adley Rutschman and William Contreras are so valuable. Is that catchers just don't generally play every day. It's a hard position physically. And Danny Jansen does not play every day. And when he does play, he is an incredibly efficient fantasy player. He just fucking rakes because he is, he's sort of like the, as Mason Miller is the father, he is sort of the son. And maybe Tarek Skubal is the Holy Ghost. We'll sort of figure that out as it goes on. But he just rakes and he's awesome. And if he played every day, he would be up there in that upper echelon of catchers, but he doesn't. And the worst thing you can do as a fantasy owner, like Bean said, if you roster 2 catchers, it's a waste of roster spot. But more than that, you can roster a catcher that doesn't play every day. So you're just like throwing away a lineup spot,
Right.
Maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and that's idiotic. So as much as he is one of my favorite players in baseball, for better or for worse, no need for that. I'll also say, just in regards to the wild card, there's no wild card. There's nothing. There's nothing. No.
Yeah, no, not a wild card team.
So there's really no point in making any sort of win now moves, and like I think that shows in Max's activity and like the stats he's going after. Like there's no need to like drop any injured guys or like guys that might be good next year but like aren't necessarily good this year or hurt this year to like win a strikeouts category in a week 6 matchup against fucking Perry. Like there's just no point. You're not going anywhere. So just like, roster Shane Bieber, roster Felix Bautista, roster Merrill Kelly, hold on to like TJ
Why is he
Friedel.
still rostering Cedric Mullins, though? He's starting him, too.
Because there's no need to, like, no one is going to be better. And like, you hold on, like, again, like there is no need for Max to pick up someone that he thinks will not be as good as the guy he's dropping next year because he's on like a heater this year. It just doesn't matter.
Cedric Mullins will not have a fucking job next year.
Yeah,
And
I
then
didn't
I'll
realize
flip
how
him
bad
in.
Cedric Mullins had been. That's bad. Brenton Doyle's here.
The goat?
He was a Gold Glove All-World defensive center fielder last year.
Is he the Holy Ghost?
And this
He might
year
be
he's
the Holy
actually
Ghost.
tearing it up on offense. He's the only one doing anything in Colorado these days. Justin Turner's here. That's fun. Look, I think Max's team is decent. There's an
Jonathan
outside shot
India
of the wild
sucks.
card. Look, it pisses me off that Max rosters Jonathan India, and I look at his team every day, and he rosters Jonathan India like
You want my
less than
dislike,
once a week,
Drew?
or
Here's a
starts him less than
Jonathan
once a week.
India. We got a patch card. We're gonna
Rip it up?
rip this fucker in half.
Oh,
Fuck
my
you,
God.
Jonathan India.
Oh my god, that's just happened. Well, that is. I'm tagging that. That's the highlight of the pod. Oh my god,
Jonathan
that
India
card has
should not
history,
be.
man. We've talked about that card on the pod before.
Yes, here is half of it. I've cut his lower body off.
Goodness gracious.
Awful player
Unbelievable.
should not be on the Reds.
Look,
sorry.
Alec Manoah is here. I don't want to push my own agenda. I am trying desperately to trade for both Dylan Cease and Sonny Gray. But your Max, is there reason to roster either of those guys, or are you looking to trade those guys for a massive haul?
I mean, if they're going to be good, I've talked from speaking to Max previously, he sort of views his window as like starting up again like 2 years from now.
I think a year from now. I think it coincides with Munetaka Murakami coming to the MLB.
Yeah,
Maybe
and-
Roki
and-
Sasaki.
Yeah, like a year, 2 years from now. So like Dylan C specifically, will still be good a year or 2 years from now. Like I could see you trading Sonny Gray. I think that makes sense. He could
But
retire
who's going to
tomorrow.
pay you for Sonny Gray?
Apparently Drew.
What would you pay while Drew's gone? What would just be a number chuck out there, Bam-wise, that you would pay for Sonny Gray?
I will say I'm slightly incriminating myself as I am trying to trade Max for Sonny Gray in a different league. So I don't want to throw those trade negotiations like too far under the bus in terms of specific numbers, but I think he has value to teams that are trying to win this year. I mean, he's been unbelievable. So I don't,
All right, well,
If
we'll
he
have
holds
Drew
the
answer
deadline
that
in some-
question because you can't give an
Yeah, no,
answer
please
without
put a
incriminating
number
yourself.
on him.
Drew, what's a number on Sonny Gray, Bam-wise, that you would pay?
He's trying to do it in this league.
50 to 60 band?
Really?
Oh, fuck no.
Oh my
Couple
God, Max!
hundred
Trade
prospects.
Sonny Gray to Drew right this minute. Don't even question it. Go and get that money this minute.
What did Paul Skeens go for? 55? And you're just saying you would go
Sonny
50?
Gray.
Paul Skeens' entire career went for 55 Bam, and you just put up 50 for maybe a year and a half of Sonny Gray. If Sonny Gray gets injured ever, he's just gonna retire. What's the point of coming back?
If he gets injured, he's getting dropped. I don't disagree. All
You
right.
would pay
so
So,
dropped in
$5
real
million
life.
Paul Skeens' entire career for a guy who, if he gets injured one time, will get dropped.
See, I was thinking more
Wow.
like 15 to 20, maybe like a little less than that, somewhere right around
If
there.
everyone was offering 15 to 20, I could see why he hasn't been moved yet. Because he's
this is a league that values these veteran aging pitchers very highly. Remember that Max Scherzer was traded for Mike Trout in this league. Never forget.
that's
he?
not true.
That doesn't.
That's not true.
What is with you and these bullshit facts tonight? Literally has never happened.
Max Scherzer was
Oh
traded
my
with
God.
Mike Trout.
I don't
It's
think
been
that's
4
true.
years
It
since
sure
that
was.
trade. It's
Wow,
been
what a
4
deal.
years.
Jesus.
I don't have the perfect memory for trades 4 years ago.
Max
don't
Scherzer
be
was traded with
spouting
Anthony
like it
Volpe
is.
for
All right,
Jacob
let's-
DeGrom. But
Let's
besides
move on. Let's move on to Perry. But is to finish up for Max, I think he's done a good job overall of rebuilding what was otherwise a franchise that, quite frankly, had no future. It was very bleak for a long time, and no one can blame Max for that. I don't know if anyone had faith when this league started the way that it did and then transitioned into farm systems that it would be around long enough to realize the fruits of a legitimate farm system.
Mhm.
I think most everyone's pretty sold that this league will be around for quite a while. So I'm happy to see Max kind of embrace it a little bit, and glad to see the changes to it. I think he has a bright future, which has never really been said about his team before. Perry, on the other hand, better than we expect, arriving sooner than expected. I would imagine if we were to put a gun to Adam's head, he would say he is more scared of Perry this year than Max, and going forward for 2025 as well. However, we've let Adam speak a lot first, so Ben, I want to get your opinion. Perry, much better than last season. What's kind of changed for him?
Well, offensively, he's much better. And that's really the big change for me is the offense. He's got some fresh faces in here, some guys who are really turning it on. I mean, Jeremy Pena was like a laughing stock. For a good chunk of last year, he got traded, he got moved around, he got dropped. He was all over the place. And now he's hitting 338 and absolutely setting the world on fire. In terms of what Jeremy Pena can do. So you've got guys like him, Rhys Hoskins, before his injury was absolutely tearing it up. He was doing great. 9 home runs and 27 RBIs from Rhys Hoskins. I don't think anybody was expecting that, especially on a Brew Crew team that isn't that good. So, offensively, Anthony Volpe has been killing it. Paredes has been good. Cronenworth has been very good. So, offensively, much, much better. Pitching, for me, is the thing that's pretty suspect with Perry. I look at his pitching. It's extremely shallow in terms of the starting pitchers. Just looking at it, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pitchers. Now, don't get me wrong, 8 pitchers, if they were good, would be fine for any other team. But he's rostering some guys on here where you're like kind of head scratching. You're like, well, this guy wasn't very good even if it was healthy. I mean, Edward Cabrera had probably the worst starts of the season out of any pitcher in baseball. I mean, just absolute pants-shittingly bad. I understand it was only a few games, don't get me wrong, and there's a hope for the future, but right now he's an injury, so he's not doing anything for him.
His first game had 1 earned 10 Ks.
Yeah,
Went
let's
real
look
hard
at
from
let's look at the after game. Let's look at the games after that.
Not worried about that. Thanks, though.
Yeah, and then you've got someone like Matt Manning. I mean, plays for an awful team. Yeah, I know. You want to say something about this. Plays for an awful team. I get it. He's getting strikeouts, but he's still giving up a fuckload of hits. I mean, just a lot. People are making solid contact off of him. I mean, Hunter Green has been good. He's gotten a lot of strikeouts, but there's a lot of guys under a 3 ERA at this point, and he's not there. And he only has 1 win on the season, which is a reflection on the Reds, don't get me wrong. But again, the pitching to me is a little suspect, but the offense, massive improvement from Perry. Really like it.
Adam, you're currently your name is the Baltimore Orioles utility man, even though that's not really apt anymore. We were talking about this earlier. You're going to change that. But before that, if people may recall, you were the 2024 Detroit Tigers pitching staff, I believe.
I believe that's correct.
So I believe at one point you owned all three of Casey Mize, Tark Skubal, and Matt Manning. You kept the good one. So what can you tell us? Because Matt Manning finds himself here on this roster. And I know Ben just talked a little bit about Matt Manning, and maybe Matt Manning's not important enough to warrant a full conversation, but Jack Flaherty is on the Tigers, and he's here too. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about Perry's pitching, maybe the Detroit Tigers pitching a little bit, Matt Manning and Jack Flaherty. What do you see? What do you think?
Perry's pitching is, like being said, shallow. It's sort of always been fun, even though I think Jesus Luzardo is getting progressively less fun and more bad. Max Fried is great. Edward Cabrera, again, less and less fun, more and more droppable. But he's getting there. The Tigers just like really have something going, and like they've really, I mean, every single player on their starting rotation has increased their velocity by like 3 miles an hour year over year, and they've increased their IVB like an inch year over year. Like they just have something going that like makes parts of me tingle that shouldn't be on a public YouTube video. So like, I think I'm on the record. I tried to trade for Jack Flaherty, I believe 5 days before his 14 strikeout game. I offered, I think it was 25 BAM for Jack Flaherty a couple days before that. Perry declined because his pitching staff was too injured, which is like, God damn you, like Edward Cabrera for like keeping me from getting that done. Like
One of the all-time revenge games, by the way.
Jack Flaherty currently leads the league in strikeout to walk percentage, and I hate to put you all on game, but we are getting to the point of the season where strikeout to walk percentage is like, I wouldn't say stable, but like the leading indicator of future pitching success.
Listen, if Jack Flaherty was on the Dodgers, he'd be one of the top pitchers in the league.
Yeah,
and that's tough.
He's been pitching well. Matt Manning is a guy that I think I've solidified. He's the Holy Ghost. I've said it for like 3 other players. He's the Holy Ghost. Mason Miller, Danny Jansen.
What about Matt Manning do you like?
Oh my God! Like, don't even get me started. So he limits, and like go to last year, he like limits hard contact so well for like no reason.
He gave up 9 hits.
That doesn't mean he's not limiting hard contact.
Okay, he's not limiting contact, period.
Please check yourself. Contact, sure, but hard contact, yes. His slider was great last year. It's still good this year. His fastball has always been good, even though when I owned him as a prospect, he was throwing like 97, and now he's throwing like 93. So like clearly some, less good there. God only knows if he had, showed up the way that I had owned them. But he's got good fastball shape. He's got a good slider. He fucking pounds the strike zone. He's just a guy, and he's like totally usable in fantasy. So again, I'm a big fan there. Just in terms of the rest of the pitching staff for Perry, like I don't think there's anything to write home about. But those two guys, I mean, especially Flaherty, should be rightfully sold for a absolute fuck ton at the deadline. And I don't think there's like
a 3.88 ERA, a 1.05 WHIP, and a 63 Ks is nice. It's very nice. Mm-hmm. You know what's not nice? An 0-3 record because he pitches for the Detroit Tigers.
That's what I said. If he was on a better team, his value would be sky high. You're not going to get wins from him. That's not why you're going to get him. You're going because he owns a pretty good ERA and he has a fuck ton of strikeouts.
I also think that you're right, but he does have a game against the Oakland Athletics, prestige offense they are, of 6 innings, 6 earned this year. And that's been like his really lone blow-up start. And like that has inflated his ERA a bit. And I think, when everyone's going volume and like wins are all of a sudden just like, are you pitching more guys than the other guy? Like, I don't think wins are like as premium of a stat. If you're going like 8 on 8, like pitching wise in a week, and your guys are on better teams and they can get the wins, and the other guys are on the White Sox, then like they don't get the wins. Like then I think individual pitcher wins make a bigger difference. But when you're sort of throwing shit at the wall, seeing what sticks, and using all matchup acquisitions on like, and generally if you're streaming, it's like in good matchups. Like I think like you can sort of figure out wins as you go, but those ratios and those strikeouts I think are sort of here to stay, and I think it's appealing. And he's also like, isn't he weirdly not that old? If I'm not mistaken.
He was always pretty young. He's probably like 29 now. Pretty wild that Jack Flaherty got to begin his season at the Chicago White Sox, then got to play Oakland when they were legitimately the worst team in the league, and like began the season with the record for most errors in like the first 3 innings of a baseball game. Like they were legitimately atrocious. He began the season with the White Sox in Oakland. Then he had the strikeout-heavy Twins back-to-back weeks, strikeout-heavy Tampa Bay following that, and then a weak-ass revenge game against the St. Louis Cardinals. It's not been a murderer's row of opponents. He's also had the Cleveland Guardians, who is arguably the best team he's had to pitch against all season, and then the Astros. So maybe it gets a little bit bumpier for Jack Flaherty. You guys talk about the pitching. The offense here, I talked about it in my article I wrote with the report cards a little bit earlier this week, but like really, man, the young shortstop talent here, Zach Neto, Anthony Volpe, Jeremy Pena, Ezekiel Duran, if you like him, and he's been red hot since he's gotten an everyday role with injuries on that team. Geraldo Perdomo, he's still holding on to, presumably because the sunk cost is way too high on that deal. And Tommy Edman, too, also qualifies at shortstop. As does Tyro Estrada. There's so many good shortstops here. I like the offense. Perry's on the up and up. I legitimately think he can beat any team in any given week if he plays his cards right. And that is much more than can be said for what he did last season. But firmly error up for Perry. He's going to add Andrew Painter next year. The outfield is a little weak, and the prospect pool in the outfield is deep with a lot of question marks. I would love to see, to your point, Adam, it'll never happen because it's an in-division trade, but like, could you imagine Jack Flaherty for like Dylan Cruz?
That makes no sense.
It was awful.
We just talked about how Max isn't going to trade for guys who aren't going to be.
I know that's not going to happen. But like,
it's who has 2 thumbs, 25 BAM, and a starting pitching slot ready for a Detroit Tiger. Like, just come on down.
Maybe Graydon wants to really run it in the division this year, and
like
Perry could get a PCA. Yeah, you get a nice Pete Crow Armstrong going or something.
PCA is like a much better, and like I think Graydon is trying to sell PCA, and I think that makes sense because eventually he won't have a prospect ranking next to him, and he'll be way less valuable than he is.
Right.
Like when all of a sudden, like as of right now, he's the 13th best prospect in baseball, but someone somewhere along the line is going to find out that he's He's like a 320 OBP guy that goes 15 and 15 at like the bottom of like an okay lineup, and like that's just like it's really nothing.
That sounds like Dalton Varsho.
That generational defense does a lot for PCA's rankings.
Oh, he is Dalton Varsho then.
Well, gotcha. He's Dalton Varsho with less offensive upside and much better defensive. Like it's the only reason
Dalton Varsho's an elite defender. Why are we talking about Dalton Varsho's defense?
You're the one who brought it up.
Let's not talk about Graydon's team here. We got to move on to Jack's because we're already an hour 25.
If PCA was an average center fielder, I don't think he'd be a top 100 prospect.
Well, Dalton Varsho is a.
Oh my God!
No.
We're not going down this path.
It's okay.
It's okay. We're gonna do something between this and Adam, you text me about this because this is why you wanted to appear on the podcast. Yeah, why don't we take a break from the divisional deep dives and let's talk about the brand new StatCast metric, and you're going to know more than I do.
I do got to say something, guys. I apologize. I got to hop off. I just realized the time for me. I got to get a lot of shit done. But continue the podcast to my tradition. I will see you all later. Drew, am I all right to leave? It says 99% uploading, just very quickly.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Mine's also at 99. That's sort of just how it goes, I think.
I think he left anyway. I don't think he was going to wait for my answer. I think he was just going to leave anyhow.
He was done. He was done. This wasn't gonna be his segment. He's an old school fan.
How's your bourbon looking?
A little too full at this moment, but this is gonna be my third, and I don't want to go like hungover to work tomorrow, but it might happen.
Well, the solution is just not go to work tomorrow. But
that's a really good point. It's a really good point.
Okay, so we got a couple more things to talk about. I have invited a third guest. We'll see if he joins to help us with the remaining segments. But let's real quickly talk about the StatCast metrics. As I was saying, I'm probably not as familiar as you. I don't follow this stuff as closely. I've never been the biggest StatCast guy, as you probably know, and as you probably laugh about, because you're like, well, that explains a lot.
It's a real Cardinals fan of you.
Yeah, real National League guy over here.
Absolutely. We need more bunting.
But I did read an ESPN article. I am at least somewhat fluent in the language of these new batting metrics. But why don't you walk us through, what do these mean? What do the leaderboards show? And what does it mean for the league? Like, what are your takeaways for FTN?
Yeah, so the new metrics that have come out there, it's just generally bat tracking. And if you go to Baseball Savant, which you may or may not have bookmarked on your Google Chrome, depending on how cool or not you are. The main chart, the axes are average swing speed and squared up per swing. So we'll start by going average swing speed. It sort of is what it sounds like. It's just how fast are you swinging the bat. And sort of going through the top guys in order here, you'll sort of get what it is, and it'll sort of make sense. Top guy, far and away, not even close, is Giancarlo Stanton. At 80.6 miles an hour, I believe, averaged about 72 for the MLB. Second place, O'Neal Cruz with 77.9. Third place, Kyle Schwarber, 77 for Matt Chapman, 77 as well. So this is sort of being interpreted as like a raw power sort of metric. And then on the y-axis, you will see squared up per swing percentage. So squared up is being defined as sort of like the exit velocity of the hit. Drew, stay with me here. Is 80% or higher of the maximum exit velocity of that is possible between your swing and the pitch velocity. So it's almost like an efficiency, like how well are you hitting it as to like how well you could hit it. And you'll see the top of those leaderboards. It'll make sense. By far and away, the leader is Luis Arias. Second place is Juan Soto, and third is Mookie Betts here. So that is sort of being viewed as like, whereas average swing speed is sort of the power tool, the raw power tool, squared up per swing is sort of like the hit tool part of it, which I think is exemplified great in like the top guys in the category. I sort of think it's why they released it at the time that they did, because like it just sort of like looks right now in terms of like validating the metric. A couple of guys that I think I'd like to point out as like notably fun and like sort of like the quadrants of it is one. We'll start with Luis Arias, who's by far the slowest swing speed in baseball and the highest squared up percentage. So you can sort of see by the guys I named in the highest swing speed that like the faster you're swinging the bat, sort of the more committal and the more potential, but like the more swing and miss, like the less consistent you're going to be with your contact. And the guys who swing it slower are being more efficient with their contact. It's guys like Luis Arias up there, as well as Bryce Terang. It's sort of Brendan Donovan, Jung-Hoo Lee, or guys that are really on the top of that leaderboard as well. So sort of the contact traditional hit guys like Stephen Kwan as well. slow bat speed, high squared up. And then another, Drew, you'll love this, is like the main example of like this guy is the best hitter in baseball is Juan Soto, who is 10th in the league in swing speed, so that power metric, and then second in the league in squared up percentage, so the hit tool metric. So like not only is he swinging the bat hard to like have these higher echelon power outcomes, he's also hitting them at the second highest rate in the league. So like, congratulations.
I just don't know why he's not hitting 450 with 25 home runs already at this point in the season. That's like my biggest takeaway is why is he not better?
I don't know. He's unbelievable, and you could say he's the best hitter in baseball, and I think a lot of people would agree with you. And I think anything else is getting a bit greedy. I heard some folks talk today. I was saying that squared up percentage or squared up per swing, it like probably needs more time to stabilize, and is more descriptive than it really is predictive. So it's really just like almost like line drive rate in a way that like it's more showing like who is hitting well now as opposed to like who is going to hit well. So Juan Soto's swinging a hot bat and he's hitting it hard, and it's all coming together. Another fun anomaly. We were talking about Perry's team and his bats earlier. Isaac Paredes like continues to be the weirdest hitter in baseball. He has an incredibly slow swing speed, and we probably won't talk about it here because I don't want to rant for forever. But an incredibly long swing length, which is sort of like traditionally you want short swing straight to the ball. You want it short and fast. He is incredibly slow bat and incredibly long swing, which means he's sort of catching the ball out in front very slowly. He's just sort of like doing his best to like make good contact out in front and pull it. And
I'm very curious if for Isaac Paredes, if that means does he really struggle against high velocity pitchers?
So I think another big takeaway in this is that bat speed does not equal timing. So like you see guys like Luis Arias, Steven Kwan, like they have really slow swing speeds, Brendan Donovan, but they also have really low whiff rates. So it's not necessarily like they're bad against velocity. It's sort of like they're just limiting that max power output to like make sure they get the barrel on the ball. So I sort of view like a high speed swing as sort of like a committal swing. It's sort of like I'm swinging for the fences, like I'm not getting cheated. Whereas sort of the low like speed swings are sort of like I'm going to place the barrel on the ball. I'm going to stroke the ball where I want it to go to the right center field or whatever. Like I'm just going to like see ball, hit ball, as opposed to like use my physical talents to hit the ball 650 feet at 145 miles an hour. So it doesn't quite equate to those velocity or contact struggles. It's actually quite the opposite.
The ESPN article I read had a lot of key takeaways here. Juan Soto was mentioned. William Contreras is arguably the best combination of all the new batted ball.
He's
metrics.
Sort of like a poor man's Juan Soto in that aspect, which is a good thing to be. I would love to be a poor man's Juan Soto.
So, and I believe his brother Wilson Contreras is pretty high too, but RIP with his injury. Those Contreras brothers, man, it makes me wonder. A couple of brother catchers, the Molina brothers were elite. These guys makes me wonder if those Caro brothers, if we should see some more FTN bids on those guys in the prospect.
I mean, that's the most respect that Jose Molina will have ever received and potentially should have ever received for his.
I was talking about Benji Molina. Thank you very much, and obviously my boy Yadier.
My mistake. I think a good takeaway again to sort of wrap up. You sort of mentioned like how we should be using this. So I think there is an argument to be made that again like. It sort of like makes sense who is who and sort of like finding the archetypes that I sort of mentioned. So you can sort of like confirm your eye test and like what type of player a guy is. Sometimes you're sort of surprised on like guys that pop on the swing speed, potentially with more raw power. Then they're showing, or potentially, it's a good buy low chance of guys that have like not shown the power, but potentially could. Corbin Carroll has very high above average bat speed, as well as Colton Cowser. And they, might not be looked at as power guys, but they like clearly have that potential. My other takeaway is that I think this is like generally not that useful in terms of like diagnostics. Because for this season at least, because they just started this year. So like when you look back and you're like, wow, Paul Goldschmidt's really terrible this year, like you can't go back in time and be like, did he have a higher bat speed before and did that decline?
And that's because this is only starting tracking for this year?
Publicly, yes.
Yeah.
MLB teams have had this for forever because they're better than us, but like in the future years, like you can look back and be like, this guy has lost 3 miles an hour of bat speed year over year. Like that, all of a sudden, that power potential is just not there anymore. And like that's
Bo Bichette is. I wonder where Bo Bichette. I bet he's very long swing, but also a fast swing. He's gonna fall into the Nolan Arenado camp, I believe.
Nolan Arenado has very slow swing speed. Bo Bichette also has a very slow swing speed, 29%.
Very long.
Let me see if I can find how long it is. Pause. I'm not sure I'll be able to do it, like in time enough for this podcast purposes. But here it is. He has a 7.2 swing length, which is.
Does any of it stand out as like, this is why he's really bad?
Everything about Bo Bichette is why he's really bad. So he has a below average swing length, just barely, and below average swing speed as well. So
you watch him on video, and I guess what I'm curious, this is where I think they need to take the stat is, what is the swing length in relation to like body length, like height and length of arms? Because when Bo Bichette swings the bat, it looks like it's a huge swing for him. But, you put that against Giancarlo Stanton, it's probably not very, very big. So I guess I would love to see these like as a ratio or percentage to height and arm length. I think that might be more helpful.
And I think a variable to add, I sort of alluded at it earlier with Paredes, is that like it's sort of approach based as well, which I think is sort of the next step, is that like Bo Bichette has a short distance between the bat swing length is measured between when the swing starts and when you make contact with the baseball. So Paredes has a really long swing because he tries to catch all the balls out front to pull them. So he is swinging longer to get the ball out front. Whereas Bo Bichette, to his detriment, tries to put a lot of balls opposite field. So he can afford to start his swing later because he's putting them on the opposite field, which, starting later, making contact with the ball later, that's the short swing length coming in. So there is an approach, to it as well.
Yeah, very good stuff. I mean, it's not been too terribly long that we've had access to all these advanced metrics, and God knows we love to post our Baseball Savant StatCast pages to the group me all the time. But so just be another metric. And who was it? Well, it was Jacob who was like, well, this will just give us all the fuel and ammo we need to justify our rostering of shitty players because they have good swing metrics, I guess. So very exciting, unusual stuff, new stuff to us, but definitely stuff to monitor. Going forward, love to hear that Juan Soto is number one, but William Contreras up there as well. He is hard carrying Graydon's team through a time period where, we don't have to get into it. We talked about it in the power rankings, but we got one more segment to go, or maybe, I don't know if you have other stuff you want to talk about. We do have a Divisional 2 deep dive. We are an hour and 40 minutes in. Woo! No one's clicking on this link if this thing goes over 2 hours.
That's
let's try to get. Well,
we're making work days.
let's try to get this about 15, 20 minutes. What an interesting division, man!
It's way more interesting than Division 1.
It is brutal. I'll just start with this. The luck index that Jacob pasted today in the group chat. It's no one's claiming it's the be all end all. So many decisions that are otherwise captured in the luck index number. It's not known, it's unknown, but some percentage of the luck index can be explained by explicit, purposeful managerial decisions during a matchup. There are things that Jack simply does that is better than other people in the league, and it helps him get lucky. This is the difference between a good manager and a bad manager. A good manager is not going to take the Rockies and have them make the playoffs, but it could be the difference between a 65 and a 70-win season. A bad manager is not going to mismanage the Dodgers to the point that they missed the playoffs. But he could be the difference in the World Series title or not. The point being, what we do week to week isn't necessarily indicative of the talent level, but managers can certainly have an effect. And Jack is showing year over year to be the best of the best in the league in terms of management and ownership. It's time to give credit where credit is due. For anyone who thinks that I disrespect Jack and don't think he's a great owner, you are sorely mistaken as somebody who has now not lost, there's a couple ties, but has not beaten Jack in 15 straight times. It has been week 1, 2020. Week 1, this was COVID. This was the first week of the COVID season was the last time I saw a win on the ledger versus Jack. I respect the hell out of him.
I guess that's not true. You have beaten Jack once since before fans were in the stands, if that makes any sense. Fans were not in the stands and then back in the stands since you've beaten
our league started 2019. I beat Jack 3 out of 4 times in year 1. Since then, I beat him the very first week of the COVID season, which is ironic because Jack finished with the best winning percentage ever in league history that year. Went on to win the title, hit the first of 2 titles. But yeah, the point is I respect Jack, and I think he is the best owner in FTN. And I wrote a little bit about it in my article, at least my oral history from what I've received from Jack. He hadn't really done fantasy sports before. He's not a big football guy. He came in, he didn't really know what he was doing. He certainly didn't know what to do from a dynasty perspective, partly because we never told anyone that first year it was dynasty because we didn't know it was going to be.
Right.
And Jack has just blitzed the league ever since 2020. He came in. I went out. I stayed with him in Phoenix for a few weeks. And we did that Rule 5 draft that we used to have. We did the Rule 5 draft. I did it in person with him. His level of preparation for that shit was off the charts. I was down there. I was swiping on dating apps, and I think we were doing the original Dynamax draft at the time. Yeah, exactly. And Jack's over here. We start the Rule 5 draft, and Jack has his targets written down. This man is ready to go. I was a little shook, I'll be honest. He was outbidding me on players. I was a little shook, but since then things have never been the same. Jack has dominated, and I know that all this to say I know what Jacob's luck index says, and doesn't really matter. Jack is going to always be positive in that because he simply is going to outmanage you and produce synergies that otherwise can't be captured in the stats of the players week to week. So I'll start with that. What's your take on Division 1, Adam? What's your big takeaway 7.5 weeks into the season?
I mean, that was just about the biggest glaze sesh I've ever heard of really anyone in my entire life. I don't have too much to add in that, he has some guys that haven't fully taken off yet, and he has other guys that have, filled in when they needed to be. I mean, fucking Ryan Jeffers, dude.
I don't want to hear his name.
done with him. Like the bit, like it was funny for like a couple days, but like I'm not doing like this whole Ryan Jeffers thing. And like, it's been well documented. Julio, like, not off to the best start that he's ever had, but like fine enough. And like, Jose Ramirez has been very good in like a weird Indian or Guardians offense. I will say, what I meant to bring it up earlier, especially talking about Jack Flaherty in Cleveland. Again, I'm just like spouting weird bits. Cleveland has like cut off sort of like the top of their stadium. So actually this season they've been like the friendliest park in the league for home runs, which you wouldn't have expected previously. Just a little tidbit for the folks out there.
I had no idea. I love that. I love when people bring those little nuggets.
Right.
Great stadium, by the way. I've been to almost half the stadiums in the league. Favorite stadium is in Cleveland. Best ballpark mustard. Fantastic craft beer options. Ohio does craft beer right.
Let's do it. But yeah, I mean, team's been good, not great. Guys are producing across the board. Matt Olson's been terrible, but will surely get better. And like, again, sort of like the earlier this season, it was like he's washed, and like it was never really going to be that. And like, I appreciate, a narrative trying to be created to like maybe like Ryan Ulrich-esque, like trick him into selling, but like that was never going to happen. Luis Castillo has been great. Obviously, he was going
more
to be
bullying and gaslighting into selling is what happened to Ryan Ulrich. Let's not beat around the bush here.
Yes, Tyler Glasnow has probably been the best pitcher in baseball up until this point. Like it's just he's good. He's going to be good. He's going to stay good. It was just it was always sort of a sleeping giant. And he really woke up on your ass. And we'll probably stay awake for the rest of the season.
What's really interesting is Jack kind of did the same thing last year, where he started slowly before dominating. So to give you guys the facts a little bit, and I promise these are factual facts this time. I have these.
We'll see about that. You're like 0 for 5.
I know. Jack this year started a little slowly, and it culminated. Like the peak moment of the anti-Jack crowd was definitely when he lost 3-7 to Ben, who is the worst team in the league. Pretty. I feel like I've used the word unanimously a lot. I don't know another synonym for it. Pretty unanimously, Ben's the worst team in the league, and Jack lost 3-7, and that was the peak of the anti-Jack crowd. This year. Last year, he started the season tied 5-5 to JD, a championship rematch as we always do week 1, and that's fine. That's respectable, but it's not the win. And then week 2, he plays Ben. He ties 5-5 to Ben. I guess Ben just has his number or something.
It's fine. Just keep going.
Tying Ben 5-5 is. Ben just must have Jack's number. He beat me 7-2-1, but that is obviously more than expected at this point. And then he lost to Sean 3-7. And the anti-Jack crowd was up. They were louder and more vocal than ever before, led obviously by the guy who lost 2-7-1 to Jack. My point is he's had some not stellar starts to the season. It's taken him a little bit to get going, but his mid-season acquisitions seem to be really good. We know he's going to manage the shit out of his matchups week to week. And just from an ownership perspective of getting the right players in the right places during the course of a season, Jack is like JD, where it seems that they have more streamer spots than anyone else. They're like, we have 30 roster spots, including IL. And they're like, I'm going to have a core of 20 guys and stream everyone else. And I think a lot of other people are trying to have a core of 25, 26 guys. And when you only have 20 guys, you don't feel so bad cutting numbers 20, 21, 22. You don't have as many regrets. And you kind of just roster guys that are hot. And boy, does it work out for them. And
Yeah, I mean, like it's why like I said earlier, like it's why bad teams are competitive is because they have the flexibility that I think good teams in Dynasty League like don't necessarily have.
but JD and Jack are the different. They are the good teams that they still do that. They don't. Jack cut Henry Davis, a very recent number 1 overall pick, who was a top 30, top 20 prospect at his height, and has unique eligibility as a catcher / outfielder. Yeah, I mean, this dude could have been a slightly better version of Dalton Varsho with maybe a little bit better overall stats and a little bit less stolen bases.
So much
And
discussion.
well, Jack just kicked him to the curb, and no one's picked him up. And I'm not saying somebody should have. It's just that's the type of guy Jack is. Because if I had invested what he invested in Henry Davis, I probably would have kept him from the sunk cost fallacy and like just the pedigree perspective. I don't know. Jack makes these moves. He's a heartless son of a bitch, and sometimes that's what it takes to win. So good on Jack, Adam. It sounds like you kind of spoke your mind on him. Well, you want to talk about Sean or my team?
Let's move on. I think. I mean, it's gonna be a little controversial, but like I think like talking about Jack in this division is like talking about me and mine. Like they're good. They're going to be good. They're probably gonna win the division, and like just sort of like leave it at that, and just sort of move on to like the more interesting like will they won't they teams. Whereas Jack will.
It hurts. That hurts so much to hear, but you're damn right.
I'm sorry. It just, it is. It just sort of is what it is at this point. I wish, I could say that there's some uncertainty in Jack's performance, but he's not washed. He never was. He never will be. He's gonna kick your ass year in and year out until there are no fans in the stands from the next pandemic. So, Sean, let's talk about Sean. You want to intro Sean before I give my take?
I had him as my preseason favorite.
Mm-hmm.
From the week 2 or 3 pod, I still had him as my favorite in the league. Look, Mookie Betts was on pace for an MVP year. He kind of still is. There's no hate to Mookie Betts. Freddie Freeman still very good. The pitching staff is the pitching staff. It's full of starting pitchers that are elite. Maybe some not having quite as elite, but none of them are bad. They're still good. He's getting contributions from people like Jose Budo. You'd expect this team to be better. Sure enough, he shows up as the unluckiest team on the luck index that Jacobs compiled for us. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised to see that. He's had some harsh recent weeks. Look, I think if you're a diehard fan of Sean's, you can point to quite a few factors and say this team
out there.
I think there's quite a few things you could point to and still support your position that Sean is the number 1 team in the league. I wouldn't be surprised to see him rip off back-to-back 8-2 wins, even though he plays Jack this week. I wouldn't be surprised to see him do it and get back on top of the rankings. His team certainly has the talent to do so. The Mike Trout injury hurts. But with that being said, Ben said it, and I kind of agree. He's in last place in the division, not a place you want to be, with a recent run of results that mirror, Sheffield United out in the Premier League.
Wow,
it ain't great.
Not pretty.
And Sean's going to be faced with a question of he made a bunch of rebuilding moves early on, thinking his team could still withstand it. It couldn't. He made win now moves to catch back up. He did. And now he's kind of caught in the middle of, well, maybe his team just quite isn't good enough, but it's also definitely not bad enough to sell. And look, he could sell a Mookie Betts, but oh my God, would that be a death knell for this team? So, look, there's a lot going on with this team, and this is one of the 3 most interesting teams in the league, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think this could go any which way, man. This could be last place. This could win the whole league, and I don't think it would surprise anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you for having him as the preseason favorite. I mean, just like you had him as the preseason favorite when Trey Turner wasn't hurt, when Mike Trout wasn't hurt, when Matt McClain wasn't hurt. I mean, these are three like upper tier producers that like you're out of your lineup and are currently producing with, you know, I mean, either Joey Loperfido or like assorted A's. Like, I mean, like this is clearly not the team that Sean had envisioned managing at this point in the year. And like you can blame him partially for that because like Mike Trout, I mean, it's a year that ends in a number. I mean, he's going to get hurt for majority of the year. So like it just sort of is what it is there. But like the other two, like Trey and McClain, like just sort of happened and like that really hurts and like it's really tough to recover from. So like I don't necessarily blame him for this offensive underperformance. I mean, it stinks, but it is what it is. And like, like right now, this lineup is nothing to be feared. And maybe, that'll turn around at some point and he'll come charging in late in the season. This is a team that like as a Conference 1 member and as like a hopeful playoff team, like I really hope like we as a league put our feet on this guy's necks. To like really keep him out of like making that late season charge because I think it's definitely there. I mean, the talent has always been there to make this run. He's managed his pitching staff quite well. As I mentioned before, he has a lot of great pieces. Houck's been great. Obviously, all of his studs have been studs, and like he has good relievers. So we've sort of as a league benefited from, I think, his injury bad luck more than anyone. And that can turn around. It cannot turn around. We'll sort of see how it is. And I think that keeps him from, he can't sell, obviously. I think all he can do is like hold and hope to get healthy because as soon as he is healthy, he's back to elite. I mean, he was number 1 in the power rankings is like, almost like a month and a half ago. Like it hasn't been that long. So like the team is there, but it's not there right now. The team is on the injured list. So it could go either way. And I think as a league, we sort of hope and hold our breath that by the time he gets healthy, that like you have pulled far ahead enough that, he has sort of no shot at coming back. So, you Drew Fowler are our great white hope. So it's no pressure or anything, but like, please keep it together and sort of put this guy out of his misery before, he has a chance to turn it around.
Yeah, Sean's a sleeping giant. It feels like the names. This is like corporate America where things are kind of just too big to fail sometimes. The names on Sean's roster just sometimes feel like they're too big to fail. And my division is, I'm not going to sit here and complain about it, but it's a freaking dogfight, man. And
It's tough.
if I have one blown week, I find myself going from first to third. It's brutal out there. We've not really talked about farm systems. I do want to say just real quickly that Sean's is just such an interesting state where he's traded away a lot of young talent. He's tried to get some young talent in, Matt McClain certainly, but I think Zach Veen, Colt Keith, Drew Thorpe, Robert Hassel, and Justin Foskey. That's 5 players I just named.
Justin Foskey, year of our Lord 2024.
Various levels of prospect pedigree. Given Sean's injuries, given the state of his team, could play a part in a wild card run. I think Jack's going to win the division. I think Sean should be the favorite for the wild card spot. And at the current pace the injuries are going and some of his performances are going, I mean, the man was out here rostering Tyler Nevin up until like 2 days ago. Eugenio Suarez is starting. Colt Keith will hit better than Eugenio Suarez by the end of the season. Zach Veen could contribute some key home runs and stolen bases at the end of the year out in Coors Field. And Sean doesn't need more starting pitching, but if something were to happen to the ancient Justin Verlander, and if Eduardo Rodriguez doesn't come back in time, or something happens to somebody else out there. I know Drew Thorpe pitches for the White Sox, but we're seeing Eric Fetty and we're seeing Garrett Crochet put together great seasons out on the South Side. No reason the best pitcher in the minors outside of Chase Hampton can't do the same. So
I think that Sean rightfully saw his window as being open, and he made the appropriate win now moves with getting rid of that young talent, and he even sort of like insured himself by getting young players back like the Colt Keiths, sort of like it just hasn't worked out. And like obviously his window isn't over this year if it doesn't come together, but like it is just sort of like an unfortunate blip. Like you sort of only have so much time, and like obviously his time is now, and to lose a year over unfortunate luck like this, like it sucks, but I think it just sort of comes with the territory. Like sometimes you just don't got it, and like maybe he kicked a puppy a couple weeks ago or something, and it's all gone downhill since then. It's really the only way to describe it.
Well, that brings us to my team, and
what a team in the league.
What a roller coaster it's been, because week one, it's like, maybe he has the best pitching staff in the league, because every single pitcher that should have had a breakout season in 2023 is actually having a 2024 breakout season. But now we're week 7, and half of those pitchers that we thought were going to have that breakout season are already gone off the roster. Gray Rod's been shipped out. Hunter Brown's been shipped out. Reed Detmers has been like the worst pitcher in baseball over the last 3 weeks. Brady Singer just got blown up. Logan Gilbert gave up 8 earned in his last start. And AJ Puck and DL Hall provided so little that they might arguably both have already lost their rotation spots.
AJ Puck came in the 10th today for the Marlins. So if that tells you.
I dropped him today, and I didn't start him yesterday because he was still on IL. He's not the most important member here. The point is I've been waiting with these guys: Brady Singer, Reed Detmers, Hunter Brown, Logan Gilbert, Gray Rod, some others, for 4 years now for some of them to look. They're young. I can justify inconsistent performances. At this point, these guys need to be rock-solid veterans that have more good starts than bad, and I shouldn't have to fear for my life starting them against the Detroit Tigers, but I do. The inconsistent pitching has been a theme for years, and it looks like it's going to continue to do so after such a promising start to the season.
Yeah, the lineup is there, and it's young, and it's fun, and it's producing. Like Soto, Judge, Tyler O'Neill's been great. Gunnar is like on an MVP type deal. Julian's looked all right. Ha-Seong Kim's been good. Like the offense just isn't the problem, and that's like including Bo Bichette like actually reaching bum status. Like I have dug deep to try to find any reason to be like maybe Bo Bichette, and the answer is no. The only reason that Bo Bichette could possibly be good this season is that he has been good in previous seasons. Like he has done nothing this year to be like he's gotten unlucky. He hasn't earned this. Like maybe no, he's just bad. He's just been bad. And that's great. And that's also including Colton Cowser, who started out, had like the best 2 weeks in the history of baseball, and has since I think gotten like 1 hit and struck out like 150,000 times. And like might get demoted. Like 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 the hitting is there. It's just like good, to be a competing team. It is sort of always like, and you've seen it with like my team, with JD's team, with Jack's team, with like almost Vinny's team to some extent. Like you sort of start by building like a consistent offense that can like beat you every week, and then you sort of get like the pitching pieces that you need to do to like start consistently winning those categories on like almost like game plan. And I think you just don't have any of those pieces. I mean, like Logan Gilbert is a great pitcher. He's definitely like a guy that is like consistent enough and top tier enough that like he could be a good guy on your staff. And I think Cutter Crawford is like half that guy, but I really think the rest are like you just can't depend on them, like you said, start to start. And like you almost don't have another option. So like I really think like it's unfortunate, and like you're gonna get weeks where like these inconsistent guys are good and you're gonna look unstoppable, and you're gonna get weeks where these guys look bad and you're gonna get embarrassed. But I think the offense is good enough to hang if you can just, I think you have the right thoughts. Like trade for Sonny Gray, I'd probably go a little younger than Sonny Gray because I don't think you're necessarily like winning anything this year, although you might. Like you need just guys that you like aren't scared to throw out in any matchup. And those guys are expensive, but like you have a deep farm. You have some bats that you could give or take away. I mean, someone's going to buy Bo Bichette, even though he's terrible and bad. But, like, you could still sell him for, like, a good piece. I texted a guy today that was, like, going to trade Joe Ryan for him. Like,
God, if I could get Joe Ryan in this league for Bo Bichette, that deal would have been done 2 months ago.
Well, that's because Bean owns Joe Ryan.
Ben values Bo Bichette at, like, 10 BAM, and he values Joe Ryan at, like, 120.
I think that's very Ben based, which is fair and why I've said the deal doesn't happen.
I don't know how Joe Ryan's been doing.
He's been
this
good.
Is about me. I know it's not about Joe Ryan, but
I know he's been good. But like I think you have the right thoughts, and you just need consistent pitching pieces. You've built the offense that is young enough that will last long enough to like give you time to build up that arsenal. But like it's not there yet. I think that's okay. And like you had an early season that like maybe gave you like false hopes of like maybe this is the year. I don't think it's the year, but it sort of shows you like what could be with like a little bit more consistency in that staff that you can build over time.
Yeah, I just all these young pitchers you'd think that start to get a little bit more consistent, and they're about as inconsistent as ever. Cade Horton, his velocity is down in AAA. That's not good.
I think he's bad. He has like 15 inches of IVB, which I don't know if you're like familiar with like the standards, but like isn't particularly high. Like I'd probably say like 17 is like where it starts to get like plus. 15 is like I don't buy Cade Horton at all. That's
Jackson Job's up there too. He's my big hope. There's some other guys. I'm not gonna waste people's time with it, but I don't know. Would have you traded Gray Rod and Hunter Brown if you were me?
I wouldn't have traded Gray Rod at all. Not a shot. Like I said, like you have the offense to like wait out the pitching. And like Gray Rod, even this year was very good. And like I would say you got bailed out by the injury more than anything. I think it was a really bad move.
Anthony Rizzo's been fired. Let's not beat around the bush. And Spencer Torkelson's my other option.
It goes against the timeline. Like you made like a win now move, and like I don't think maybe at the time you could have like fooled yourself into thinking that you had the team to do it, but like. You don't have the pitching staff to back up trading for a 73-year-old first baseman, especially when that trade involves giving away like a 25-year-old ace.
I also got Walker Buehler, and I got my Bo Bichette replacement, top 15 prospect Marcelo Meyer.
Marcelo Meyer has always been overrated. Graydon's been trying to trade him since the second he got in this league. I'm sure you know that as well as anyone.
I do.
Walker Buehler is the biggest sticky ball merchant in the league. He's just not good. We could gun his forever. I think the best thing that you could do is add young arms to, develop. Maybe not develop into like you just need pitchers that are good.
That's all I've had is young arms. I need Sonny Gray. I need veteran arms.
Just you should be in the interest of getting pitchers that are good. Walker Buehler is a pitcher that is bad.
Did you trade for Jack Flaherty if you were me?
He's probably young enough. I'd give it a look.
4 years ago, JD and I ranked the top dynasty pitchers in baseball. We had Walker Buehler number 1, and we had Jack Flaherty number 2.
Oof.
And damn, did we draft the worst dynasty baseball team ever that year.
Yeah, that's a lot of JD disrespect.
It was maybe the most wrong he's ever been about baseball. It's definitely the most wrong I've ever been about baseball. That was not a good look for us. But Adam, we are at 2 hours and 10 minutes. My God, bless your souls if you made it through all this. Although, very good content. Love having you.
This was all killer, no filler. We really did make up for what it's been like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, no podcast. Like we really just like put two together.
That's true. That's true. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
I'm gonna, for the sake of everyone, say not really. I think we hit on in-depth breakdowns of half the league. We talked about a new baseball savant Statcast metric I just ranted about it for like 10 minutes. If you want to hear more, text me. And then we did power rankings. I sort of don't really know. Like if we almost like covered all you can cover.
I had one more segment I wanted to talk about, and we kind of covered it with your national segment. We won't do it. We'll do it on a future episode. I wanted to get your thoughts. I wanted to do a segment which was MLB talk. Let's talk about real life baseball. Let's talk about for a second what's happening around there. We're not going to do it tonight, but we'll do that in the future. If somebody's interested in discussing what's happening in real life baseball, let me know, because I don't think we currently have a podcast guest lined up for the next couple of weeks. So let me know. Of course, no one's going to let me know because no one's actually made it this far into the pod. But
and good for them.
Good for them. They have lives. That's what we call those people. We call them livers. That was a bad joke. Okay, so we'll end it. We'll end it there. Thank you guys for joining. Adam, appreciate you joining the podcast. We'll certainly have you back. I'd say go Nationals, but that's not what we do around here. Fuck the Nats. We will talk to you all later.
Fuck the Nats. Good night.